Hello, this is Conan Stoops and welcome back to another Lumion Legacy HTUC video, and today's video is on Soul Burst Icigool. We have a lot to talk about Soul Burst Icigool today, so let's get right into the video. Today's video is all about how to encounter Soul Burst Icigool, from encounters and checks in teammates in order to know how to use Soul Burst Icigool in your matches, as well as knowing the roles and the sets in order to team build around Soul Burst Icigool. Today's video is all about how to encounter Soul Burst Icigool. So in order to know how to use Icigool, we must look at its base stats and its ability to determine its role in your matches. First off, it has one bad attribute of its range attack being 19, and its speed stat of 50 actually becomes a positive with its ability Party Trick, being able to set up Bane of Haste for 5 turns and ultimately become the first Bane of Haste setter with an ability related thing about it. This makes Icigool pretty good because it now outspeeds pretty much most of the metagame and pretty hard to revenge kill with this ability up. However, it also does have a good energy stat of 99 and a range defense stat of 91, both being pretty high in the 90 range. This gives Icigool some pretty natural range defense bulk while able to throw out a lot of high base energy costing moves. What's also great about Soul Burst Icigool, it has a pretty good HP and melee defense stat of 105 and 104 respectively, and one of the higher base melee attack stats of 132. This gives Icigool great damage output whether invested or not invested, and will threaten a lot of Lumions that Icigool will be able to hit neutrally or super effectively. So, with these base stats and the ability in mind, what role will Soul Burst Icigool be playing in your teams? So for the set for Icigool, it's mainly going to be running a defensive melee defensive set. It has a lot of great matchups on the melee defense, specifically being able to stop Lumions such as Barbadger, Tatab, Avatros, and way more, and it of course has enough good bulk on the range defense side to tank hits from range attackers pretty effectively. This, while it's going to be a defensive set, due to its the ability Bane of Haste, can also provide itself as a pretty good lead or anti-lead depending on your opponent's team, as it does have access to pivot. Anyways, we're going to be talking about its personality, which is going to be robust sluggish. Sluggish is definitely needed and should be prioritized over pure robust forms, specifically because Icigool wants to underspeed as much as possible, and with this sluggish personality, we'll make it underspeed as much as possible, and will also make it one of the fastest Lumions in the game with its setting ability. Also, robust will help us get the best matchups against melee attackers, and that's why it's here. Next up, we have its moveset, which is going to be the new move, Icicle Thorn. I really forgot how to pronounce it, but it's going to be the new high base power ice type move, Fade Away, which is our spirit stab, and because we do have the speed advantage against most Lumions, we're not running Baffle and just having our base melee attack do the damage for us. Icicle Traps and Rejuvenate. Definitely, Icicle Traps can be replaced for Mega Chomp or Thunder Chomp. However, Mega Chomp is more optimal considering it can take out the light type swap-ins that will being able to swap in on Fade Away. And of course, Rejuvenate is to heal. As for the item, we're running our Soul Burst, and for the TPs, 200 melee attack or 200 melee defense, my bad, and 200 HP is to max out our defensive stats and HP stats so we can tank as much as possible. And as for the energy and melee attack, it's mostly going to be running 12 and 88. This is because Icigool has way too much energy to be actually trying to optimize pretty well, so we just put the energy rule, and because Icigool's energy stat is on the odd number, we do have to put it in 12 and our melee attack at 88 in order to maximize the amount of TPs used. So with that out of the way, let's talk counters and checks and teammates for Icigool. So ultimately, because of Party Trick, you're not going to be able to use traditional fast offensive Lumions to check Icigool. First off, the best ways of checking Icigool is going to be using offensive or defensive Lumions that can completely take advantage of Icigool's Party Trick curse. First off, offensive Lumions such as Forge or Haganash, which both hit really hard, specifically Haganash with Battle Chime, Forge with its diverse coverage being able to hit most walls in the game super effectively. Now that these guys, if you run very sluggish, will be able to outspeed Icigool and most of the metagame under Bane of Haste, these guys will be massive threats on the opposing team. And as for the other Lumions, Lumi and Obsidian and Charonix, these are more defensive stops to Icigool, specifically Charonix with V Sluggish and Robust Clever, Smart Clever, whichever you want to run, will underspeed Icigool and then outspeed it in Bane of Haste so it can flash and flee off it for free damage. Luminami here, it doesn't underspeed Icigool, so Icigool outspeeds it in Bane of Haste, however it does stop it from pivoting off. And as for Obsidian is a nice blanket wall for Icigool, however, Fade Away is still something to worry about. However, light types in general can be good because it does stop Fade Away. Lumions such as Jalusa, and really only Jalusa, can risk the Mega or Thunder Chomp. However, overall, it's not good to be using light types as your main source of counterplay against Icigool. Just use the answers listed in the video or some you've found. Anyways, fire types are also good against Icigool, and Pyrelin and Seer Knight are one of the Lumions that are right for the job. However, do note these guys do get outsped under Bane of Haste, so that is a risk you're willing to take if you're running these Lumions. Other than that, teammates, plant types such as Colossotrops and Nevermare. Colossotrops more so than Nevermare because Nevermare doesn't really want to be on the field if the Party Trick curse is up. So Colossotrops abusing Bane of Haste is very good. It can stop Flash and Fleas, it can swap in on light types, and overall do a lot of damage under Bane of Haste. If you do not want to run Colossotrops as your Bane of Haste abuser, however, you can try and run Vestifer, Spec, Meditoad, Forge, or Borak. All of these Lumions all hit hard and can pressure walls very well. However, Colossotrops is ultimately the best Lumion. Other than that, we're going to be going over defensive cores, and the sad reality is Icigool is more preferred on defensive teams, specifically because defensive Lumions now have the ability to hit hard, and overall, because they're more slower than offensive Lumions, they naturally don't really have to adapt to Bane of Haste like offensive Lumions do, and are just going to be outspeeding a lot of stuff pretty well. The first core will be Soul Burst Icigool, Tundrelin, Pyrelin, or Seer Knight as your fire type slot, and then Gargolem defense. These Lumions all cover most of the metagame pretty effectively and do have attributes such as Gargolem defense, now having speed, barbs up, also now has the ability for free hazard removal pretty well. As for Tundrelin now does it pretty well against most of its wall breakers, and Pyrelin and Seer Knight, they're just here for the fire type slot. Other than that, you can try running a core of Soul Burst Icigool, Stratosaur, Barblast, and Pyrelin, a more traditional semi-stall core, which is mainly comprised of bulky Lumions that can hit hard, especially with setup in this case of Stratosaur, and can abuse the Bane of Haste turns more effectively. Other than that, you can try and run a more other core like Soul Burst Icigool, Charonix, Pyrelin, Tundrelin, or Barblast, and then Dokomori. These Lumions pretty much cover almost every wall breaker in the game, and because all of these guys can take advantage of Bane of Haste, Charonix with fast pivot, Pyrelin with burning Lumions, Tundrelin or Barblast setting up hazards or just doing damage against the opponent, and in Barblast's case, splattering around poison. And as for Dokomori can also try and run bulk up because you're not going to be running Baffle in a Bane of Haste team, or you can try and spread up hazards with Icicle traps. So with that out of the way, let's get to the conclusion and my thoughts on Soul Burst. So Soul Burst Icigool seems very oppressive. As you can tell from the counters and checks section, we've listed a few obscure Lumions, being Billowforge and Haganash, and pretty much the theme around this whole video, because you can naturally check this Lumion with offensive Lumions that can just outspeed it, because Icigool will be able to outspeed it now. Also, with the addition of Fadeaway being able to pivot off of pretty much any of its answers besides light types and some other Lumions, this ultimately means that Icigool is one of the best Lumions right now because of how oppressive it is, forcing slow Lumions that can underspeed it, like Luminami, not Luminami, but Billowforge, Haganash, very sluggish Chironix. And with the lack of Lumions that can just underspeed this and take advantage of it, as well as not a lot of stuff that can actually take off a Bane of Haste, it's really hard for Icigool, or really hard for teams to face Icigool. Not to mention that this enables a lot of offensive Lumions. Not a lot of offensive Lumions, but a lot of offensive threats, the most being Colossotrops. And compiling all this together, it being hard to revenge kill, it making its team one of the fastest things ever, and overall supporting one of the most dangerous offensive Lumions in the entire game. Do you think Soul Burst Icigool is one of the best Lumions in the game? Do you think it's an Uber, or do you think it's just fine and there's just enough counterplay to stop this Lumion? Let me know down in the comment section below. This is Cotton Stoops signing off to remind you that Zulong is still a dumpster fire.